My dear friends, today we begin our celebration of this week, which is like no other week that we celebrate in the course of the year. For us as Roman Catholics, in a particular way, because our Eastern churches celebrate a bit differently and a bit later, and others will celebrate in different ways, it is for us an opportunity to come together to celebrate the victory of Christ and to share in his victory. It is a way for us to reflect on the way that victory has come about, and an opportunity for us to reflect on the love and the power of God that we see active in our own lives and in the midst of the world. Over the course of this week, we will celebrate the great mystery in various pieces, reflecting on different aspects of it on different days. Partially because the mystery is too great for us to grasp all at once. And so we take it in pieces and reflect on different aspects of it. We gather as the church throughout the Diocese of Grand Rapids on Tuesday night for the Chrism Mass, in which we bless oils that are used for the sacraments in all our parishes. We gather on Holy Thursday night to remember the institution of the priesthood and the Eucharist that is so important to us all and that we share in each time we come together as God's people. And then we gather on Good Friday to remember in a special way the death of the Lord, carrying out the will of the Father that you and I might be saved. And at the Easter Vigil, we welcome new Christians into the new life of Christ that we celebrate with Christ, the risen Lord, who has been raised from the dead. And even as we gather here today to celebrate this Palm Sunday liturgy, we find ourselves celebrating two different aspects of the mystery that we are about. They are interconnected, and they are part of the continuous history of our salvation. We began this morning with the triumphant entry into Jerusalem, and a grand and wonderful thing that was, as we hear it portrayed in the Scriptures. And I'm sure that we have all been part of great programs or great parades of victory. I suppose I may date myself, but I remember the end of the Second World War when I was just a little boy, and the soldiers had all came home from war. And I remember there was a big parade in our town. And I think what I really remember, though, was not perhaps so much the parade as by riding in the rumble seat of the old Ford convertible car that we had and that took us down the parade route to see everybody that was coming. But there was an excitement, and there is an excitement about parades. There's an excitement about these great events that take place. And yet, the procession of the palms, if you will, Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem, had a very different purpose about it. And the purpose was that he would carry out the will of the Father in a way that none of those who waved palms understood, and none of them probably would have believed was possible to take place. Rather, he entered into Jerusalem in order that he would suffer and that he would die and be raised to life. He presented to them and to us a different model of what the kingdom was about. The kingdom is not about power, the kingdom is rather about service. And so as we reflect on this gathering today, it seems to me that it is hard for us at times to appreciate the back and forth tension that goes on in the scriptural passages. As on the one hand, we see the triumphal entry, and on the other hand, as we've heard and just heard, the account of the Passion of the Lord, where those who probably waved palms were the ones who were also at the same time in the crowd condemning him once he had gathered in Jerusalem. And as we reflect here as God's people today, it's one of the interesting things that I find, and I don't know whether it struck you that way as we were proclaiming the Passion today, that you were invited to say, crucify him. You were invited to say, we found this man misleading the people, crucify him. Give us Barabbas, don't give us Christ. These are not our words, and I'm sure that if I were to ask anyone here, is that what you really felt, or is that what you really feel, you would have said no. That's not what we feel. But this account is important to us because it provides us with the opportunity to revisit and to recall that saving event, but at the same time, it challenges us in the way that we deal with one another, and it challenges us in our relationship with God as well. Over this Holy Week, we will celebrate these saving events, but yet as we look to our own lives, we live in a society that is becoming increasingly violent, where we may not be crucifying the figure of Christ, but we may be crucifying other people, and we may be crucifying peoples throughout our nation and in our own lives as well, whether it be with our actions or whether it be with the words that we speak. Sometimes, I think, as we deal with one another, and we can look to our society, and we're very much influenced by the society in which we live, and we can never forget that. And that's why the challenge of being a Christian is so great today, because there are so many cultural forces at work in our society that work against us. And while we may not want to say crucify him, in our society we are almost at a point where people who disagree with us we want to crucify. People who do not share the same views that we have, we want to crucify. We are often at a point where those who do not hold our beliefs, we want to crucify and run them out and make them scapegoats, if you will. And so I would just like to suggest that we need to be challenged in our own lives, as we are by this scriptural passage, that certainly we do not mean that we should crucify Christ. But we need to be careful that we do not crucify each other, whether it be the people who disagree with us, whether it be the immigrants who many people have difficulty with in our society, whoever it may happen to be, the people who are criminals, the people who are homeless, the people who are of a different ethnic race or nationality than we are. Do we want to crucify them? Or even the people within our own families with whom we have difficulties at times. So I would just suggest that this Palm Sunday is for all of us a challenge. It's a challenge to celebrate the great victory of Christ as we gather here as God's people, but it's also a challenge for us, to each one of us, to look within our lives and to see, are we crucifying Christ in other people with whom we share our lives and who are part of our life and our society? This really is perhaps one of the great challenges for us all. And I would hope that this Holy Week would be an opportunity for us all to enjoy the great blessings from our God and to arrive at Easter with hearts renewed and recommitted. We all know that we want to follow the Lord, and we need to do it by being challenged by His Word and embracing His love that He has shown for us.